If you're landing on this video today, then I hope it's not for the same reason that I'm creating it, which is you've had really poor experiences with your property managers, either in the past or you're struggling with them at the moment. Now, from my experience, I've had some of the best managers in the world and some of the worst experiences with my properties. I've had things that you just dread as an investor, like tenants trashing your places, roofs falling in from water damage, and even one of my granny flats burnt down by my tenants. Now, as I've gone further along my journey as an investor and I'm at the point of my portfolio where I know what I want, I know where I'm going to be longer term, and I'm slowly chipping away at the debt, the longer term maintenance of my properties, the management of my properties, and the way that I care for them and look after them has become super important to me, which is why in this video, I wanted to share my experience running a huge property management business in the past in Brisbane and buying more than $400 million worth of properties for my clients. This video is simply my 5 top tips for looking after your property and managing your manager. Now, the number one tip that I've got, which took me more than 10 years to learn, is that my role and responsibility as the owner of the property is to manage my manager. I've really just got an annual email that I send out to my manager where I look at 2 things. One is from jumping on the for rent section of realestate.com and seeing what other comparable properties are renting for in the current market. Now, what I've found from talking to literally thousands of investors every year for the last 8 years is that more than 80% of them have rent returns at the moment that are well below market value. So the number one thing you can do in that email is look at 4 or 5 properties, copy and paste the links into the email, and just tell the manager where you would like the property to go in the next 12 months, obviously being in line with market values and then asking for their perspective. I also in that email set the expectation that I would like annual inspections at least 3 times in the next 12 months with plenty of videos so that I can get my head around the property and make sure it's maintained to the standard that I want to keep it at longer term. By sending that email, I know what I've expected and I've got some accountability, and I've also got buy-in from my property manager and they know exactly where I am. That one email has literally saved me from 10, 15 emails per property over the course of the year. Now, the second tip that I've got is staying on top of maintenance, and I used to be absolutely terrible at this. I actually had one property, which was the second I bought on the Central Coast. It was a 5-bedroom home I bought back in 2011 for, I think it was $213,000. The house was renting for $400 a week. The granny flat out the back was renting for a further $200. So I thought I'd struck gold and I was on my way to financial freedom. With that property, I literally buried my head in the sand for the first 5 or 6 years. I didn't see it. I didn't look at any of the inspections. I really didn't talk to the property manager. I just completely took their word for it. Now, when I bought it, I went up there for a few days with my mates, painted it, put new flooring down, and did a bit of a garden tidy up. When I got back to the property 5 or 6 years later, just to see how it's going, the property was absolutely trashed. Now, that wasn't, necessarily my property manager's fault, although I think they had a part in it of not looking after it as well as they should have. But it was my fault not looking at the inspection reports and actually staying on top of my property and my manager. Each time that they came to me saying that this thing was stuffed or that thing, as a young guy who was earning a small wage at the time, I was always pushing back or finding an excuse, where these days, as things come up, I fix them. So instead of 6 or 7 years later having to do a full renovation and maintenance work on the property again, I could have just chipped away at the little things as they came up, saved myself a whole lot of pain and maintained the property so much better. Now, the third tip, and I know we're all busy, is just making sure that the property manager goes through the property at least 3 times a year and provides you with a report with a list of items that could be tidied up or fixed, as well as plenty of properties. Now, as time-poor people with families, jobs, partners, or just modern life, it can be really easy to get that email and to just whack it into whichever folder on your computer. But the reality is, by spending even 5 minutes going through that, you'll have a much better idea of where your property's at. You can ask your property manager to proactively do things and keep it in the best possible condition. Because the reality is, as we work from where we are today to financial freedom in the next 30 years, we want to do the absolute minimum dose to keep the property in the best condition so that rents stay high and we protect our biggest assets. Now, my fourth tip annually is what I sort of talked about in part 1, and that is an annual rent review. Now, what I've noticed from my own property managers, even today, and they understand me because they've been working with me for more than 10 years now, is, they're busy as well and they want to make their lives as simple as possible. So what the average property manager does is when the lease comes up, they quickly look at the market and go, has the market changed? If not, we'll just keep the lease in place and the rent at what it is per week. If the market's jumped by $100 a week, they'll be like, let's just increase it by 40. You've got great tenants in the property. We don't want to lose them. And that makes their life easy because the tenant always signs off on that without leaving the property. What I do now, as I said before, is a full review of the market just once a year in January. And then I let the manager know the direction that it's heading. And then when my lease comes up for expiry and they send it through to me a couple of months before, I do another quick review of the market and just make sure I'm getting market value. Now, an example of this, which was my mistake, is that because rents have jumped so much in Queensland in the last 12 months or the last 2 years, I got a little bit complacent and I kept just sort of signing off without really looking at what the property manager was doing. But at the start of last year, I decided I'm going to start doing these things myself, not just talking about them online. So I did this review. I challenged the property manager. And now across the properties that I own and the granny flats that I own, up here on the sunny coast and in Brisbane, I'm getting an extra $35,000 per year in rent, literally from reviewing the market and challenging my manager. Now, I'd say 80%, like I said before, of the people that I speak with each year have rents well below current market values. And according to CoreLogic, they're expected to rise in Australia by at least another 10% in the next 12 months, which on most properties is between a $50 and $200 a week jump. So absolutely stay on top of this stuff. Send that one simple email and it will change your life for the better. Now, the fifth and final idea that I have for managing your property better is to physically go through the property every now and then. Now, I know for a lot of you, like myself, you're borderless investors. And if you're living in Sydney or Melbourne or WA and own up here in Queensland, it can be extremely difficult to think about jumping on a plane, hiring a car and booking accommodation, and also really expensive. But if you cannot get through the property, then organise a time once a year for your property manager to go for one of their routine inspections and just FaceTime you, walk you through the property. Or if you can't do that, then when they send the report, organise a time to catch up and talk through the property with that person. But for me personally, I've got in the habit now of going through my properties at least once every 12 to 18 months and then writing out my own little checklist, because nobody's ever going to care for your property and your asset as much as you do. And so there'll be things that your property manager looks at and goes, we don't have to worry about that right now. Where for me, it might be easy to just give it a quick touch up, some putty, some silicone, a repaint, bit of mulching, and then therefore keep the tenant happy, but most importantly, protect my $400K to $1 million asset. The reality of the property game is it's a longer term thing, and to protect your asset, you really want to treat it with a bit of respect and like it's its own little standalone business in your life. I've gone from spending 30 to 50 hours a year thinking about managing and worrying about my properties to the point where now, between literally the accountant, the property managers, and everything else going on across my entire portfolio, I'm spending less than 2 hours per year. And that's through following simple things like this, simple emails, simple walkthroughs, simple calls. And I'm noticing that by doing this and treating it like a business, my return on investment is improving, the quality of my asset is improving, and my relationships with my managers, now that I'm no longer a massive pain in the ass and flying off the handle all the time because I haven't looked after my property properly, is massively improving. So regardless of where you're at, I hope you've got a few good ideas from this video. If you haven't already done so, please subscribe to our YouTube channel, give us a thumbs up, share this with whoever you like, and I truly wish you all the best and hope that you can implement some of these super simple ideas to make your life as an investor easier.
Whew, that's a wrap.
That's a wrap.
Getting cool, bro. Yeah. Oh, sweaty. So sweaty. Oh, that's good. Look at that. So nice, eh? Oh.